Black
You need to calm
CEO
down.
left waiting outside her own
I am
office
calm.
minutes. Later, she removed the
I told you
entire
to stop.
board.
Where do you think you're going?
Hello,
Tell them.
everyone.
Sir,
Before
I
we
have every
begin
right to be
today's
here. This
video,
is my
I
identification.
need your help.
I don't
We've
care
noticed
what you
that the
think you
channel
saw.
is
You
losing
are interfering
traction,
with a police
and
investigation,
subscribing
and
is
I
one
will
of the
have you
best
arrested.
ways you can help us.
You think you can just
It's
walk in
quick,
here and disrespect the
free,
court? You are coming
and
with me
allows
right
us to
now.
continue
I am an
bringing
officer
you
of the court
great
detective.
content.
You will release me
Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Black people wait outside. The shout tore through the atrium, sharp, ugly, and so loud it made two executives near the elevator flinch. And before anyone could process what had just erupted into the quiet morning, the security officer stepped forward and grabbed the woman's blazer, twisting the fabric in his fist as if he owned the air she was allowed to breathe. Ava King didn't step back, didn't raise a hand, didn't even blink. She simply stood there still as a pillar, calm as if she had been expecting this moment long before he opened his mouth. The officer's face burned red. Spit flicked from his lips as he leaned closer, voice shredding the silence. Did you hear me? People like you wait outside until someone tells you otherwise. The words weren't spoken. They were thrown like stones, and the hall shifted. Phones lifted. Thumbs pressed record. A quiet wave of witnesses slowly formed behind her employees, interns, a few visitors in business suits. None intervened, but every camera told the same truth. The scene was no longer private. It was public, open, documented. Ava's eyes moved, just once, toward the growing semicircle of phones. She didn't look scared. She looked familiar with this, as if she had lived this moment before, in smaller rooms, in darker corners, in places where no witnesses had ever held up a camera for her. But here, in her own headquarters, under the high white columns and the echoing glass ceiling, the injustice felt louder, sharper, like a replay of something the world pretends doesn't happen anymore. The officer jerked her blazer again. You're ignoring me? You think you get to stroll in here like you own the place? Ava exhaled, slow, steady, controlled. Behind him, a young analyst whispered to her coworker, "Is he serious? She didn't do anything?" Another murmured. "Why is he dragging her like that?" Someone else whispered, "She looks important. Why is he?" But no one moved. The cameras did the standing. Ava's heel shifted half an inch, grounding herself like she was anchoring to the floor. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft enough to force him to lean closer, soft enough that the whole hall leaned with him. "I heard you." The officer froze. He hadn't expected a voice that controlled. She continued, barely above a whisper. "Now take your hand off my jacket." He scoffed. "Or what? You don't get to give orders here." A tiny ripple went through the watching crowd. Someone sucked in air. Someone else muttered, "Wow," someone whispered. "He's going to regret that." Ava didn't respond. Her silence was louder than his shouting. A second security guard stepped in, confusion tightening his posture. "Mark, what are you doing? She just walked in." "She doesn't belong here," Mark barked. "Look at her, she's trespassing." Ava's eyes flicked to the second guard, calm, assessing, and then back to Mark, whose grip only tightened. And then, now the interactive line, cinematic and precise. "Before we continue," the narrator's voice cuts in, steady and intimate. "Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Ava King." Mark's voice thundered again, dragging the hall back into tension. "You're not stepping one foot inside this building. Not today." Ava's jaw set, just slightly. In the reflection of a phone screen, she saw what everyone else saw. A black woman standing still, a uniformed man pulling her by the collar, and a crowd watching as if the outcome were already decided. But they were wrong. The moment wasn't over. The moment was loading. For a moment, the whole atrium held its breath. Ava didn't move, not even when Mark's fingers stayed twisted in her blazer. She simply lifted her chin by a fraction, just enough to remind the hall that she hadn't arrived shaken. She had arrived prepared. But the guard wasn't done embarrassing himself. He jerked his hand back, motioning aggressively toward the revolving doors behind her. "I said outside. You don't stroll into executive floors without clearance." Ava's expression didn't shift. "I used my badge at the entrance." "Yeah?" Mark barked. "Then why didn't it register in my system?" He tapped the tablet clipped to his belt as if its glowing screen validated his authority. "See? Nothing. No access. No appointment. No business. He said nothing like it was a verdict. Behind them, one of the junior staff whispered, "She walked through security without being stopped. Her badge had to have scanned." Another responded, "Then why is he acting like she broke in?" A third voice, shaky, "Because he thinks he can." Ava heard it all. She always heard everything. She turned slightly, just enough to survey the room, the interns with iced coffees, the analysts clutching their laptops, the mid-level managers whose eyes flicked between fear and curiosity, all silently watching the way she was being treated in a building she knew better than any of them, a building she'd built from near collapse 2 years earlier. But they didn't know that. Not yet. Mark planted himself in front of her again, chest puffed, voice pitched to humiliate. "You think dressing up in a suit makes you fit in here? This is a corporate environment, not a public sidewalk." A murmur went through the hall. Someone muttered, "What does that even mean?" Someone else whispered, "He's digging his own grave." The second guard, Tom, shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. His voice dropped low. "Mark, maybe back off. She hasn't done anything." Mark snapped, "You're new. Stay quiet. People like her slip into lobbies all the time trying to—" Ava's eyebrow lifted, subtle but surgical. "Trying to what?" she asked. Mark's jaw tightened. "You know exactly what I mean." But she didn't answer him, because she wasn't here to fight with a man who thought volume was authority. Instead, she reached into her blazer pocket, not fast, not sudden, slow, deliberate, graceful. The hall tensed anyway. Phones rose higher. Tom stepped forward with a hand half lifted, unsure if he should intervene. Ava simply pulled out a small leather card case and paused. Mark scoffed. "Don't even try it. Fake badges don't work here. I'm not stupid." A soft gasp fluttered through the onlookers. One analyst whispered, "How does he know it's fake? He hasn't even seen it." Ava didn't break eye contact with Mark. "You didn't ask to." Mark bristled. "I don't need to ask. I can tell when someone doesn't belong." The words echoed heavy, familiar, centuries old. Ava inhaled slowly, the kind of breath someone takes when they've survived this scene more times than anyone around her could imagine. The kind of breath pulled from memory, not fear. She remembered being 24, standing in a bank lobby in Baltimore, wearing the only suit she owned, cheap fabric, sleeves a little too long. A manager told her, "Clients don't dress like that." He called security. She waited outside for 42 minutes, outside a building she would later acquire. Now, decades later, the same script played again, only this time, the audience was larger, and the ending would not be the same. Tom finally stepped between them, voice cautious. "Mark, maybe we should just let her show the badge?" Mark shoved his arm aside. "I make the calls here." Ava didn't move. She didn't argue. She just held his gaze with a calm so sharp it felt like steel, and the hall leaned in, waiting without knowing they were seconds from the moment everything breaks open. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was tight, stretched, sharp around the edges. Mark planted his feet like he expected the whole lobby to back him up. But the room wasn't with him anymore. It was just watching him spiral. Ava held the leather case in her hand, unmoving, as if the moment belonged to her alone. And somehow it did. Mark jabbed a finger toward her. "Put that away. I'm not wasting time verifying some fake badge you printed at home." A woman near the front, an employee in a gray pencil skirt, whispered, "Who prints badges at home? What is he even talking about?" Her coworker nudged her gently, eyes glued to the unfolding scene. "Just record. HR's gonna need this." Phones stayed high, thumbs shaking. The tension wasn't rising anymore, it was swelling. Tom tried again, voice lower than before. "Mark, we're not supposed to accuse anyone without checking." Mark snapped. "She walked into the executive zone without clearance. I know what I saw." But the truth was, he hadn't seen anything except what he assumed the moment she stepped through the door. Ava finally opened the leather case with a soft click. No rush. No fear. Just quiet certainty. Mark lunged forward and slapped it shut with his palm before she could even lift her arm. "She doesn't get to show anything," he barked. "I'm detaining her until a real executive comes down." A ripple went through the crowd, shock, disbelief, the kind of hum that fills a courtroom after a witness says something damning. Ava didn't look at the cameras, didn't look at Mark. She looked at Tom. "Is this standard procedure now?" she asked quietly. Tom swallowed. "No, it's not." Her eyes lingered on him for a moment, measured. steady long enough for him to understand that he had just taken the first step toward the right side of history. Mark grabbed her arm, not violently, but rough enough that the crowd reacted with a collective inhale. "You're staying right here," he growled. "We're calling upstairs. Someone with actual authority needs to verify who you are." "And that someone isn't you?" Ava asked. The words were soft, but they landed like a knife, sinking into wood, clean, controlled, devastating. Mark's face reddened deeper. "Don't get smart with me." A voice piped up from the back, young, shaky, but brave. "Why won't you just let her show the badge?" Heads turned. It came from a junior analyst, barely mid-20s, backpack still slung over one shoulder, thumb hovering over the record button. Mark barked, "Stay out of this." But the young analyst didn't lower the phone. "I saw her scan her badge downstairs. It turned green." The lobby stiffened. Mark whipped around. "You did not." The analyst stepped forward an inch. I did. She walked through just like everyone else. No alarm, no stop. Security let her through." Tom's eyes flicked toward Ava again. Mark pointed at the analyst. What's your name? You think you know more than me? You think she belongs here?" The kid pressed his lips together but didn't step back. "I think you're mishandling this." The room exhaled in one collective, silent gasp. Ava finally spoke. Not to Mark, not to the kid, not to anyone in particular. "Bias isn't loud," she said quietly. "It's confident." Phones angled closer. People leaned in. Mark sneered. "Oh, please. Don't pull that card with me." Ava tilted her head slightly. "Which card do you think I'm pulling?" He froze, not because she trapped him, but because the question held up a mirror he wasn't ready to look into. The kid stiffened. Tom shifted. A woman near the elevators lowered her phone just enough to wipe a tear from her cheek. Something had cracked, and everyone felt it. Mark straightened his uniform. "You're not stepping into that elevator until I get confirmation from upstairs. If you think a badge makes you somebody, you're delusional." Ava didn't flinch, didn't exhale. She simply stood in the center of the expanding crowd, composed as marble, rooted like she'd grown from the floor. And without raising her voice, she said, "You're right about one thing. A badge doesn't make me somebody." She stepped forward just one precise, commanding step, but stopping me does. The whispering surged again, fear, awe, indignation, all tangled together. Mark didn't know it yet. Tom didn't know it yet. The crowd didn't know it yet. But the storm they had accidentally summoned was already building behind her calm. The moment hung in the air, thin, stretched, trembling. Ava hadn't moved since her last sentence, but the room had. People shifted their weight, phones angled forward, shoulders straightened as if the crowd suddenly realized they were no longer passive observers, they were participants. And that was when she spoke. Not Ava, not Mark, but someone none of them expected. A voice soft, controlled, but hitting the atrium like a clean strike. "Sir, she does belong here." Every head turned. It was a young woman in a navy blue blouse standing near the security desk. A junior receptionist, the kind of employee who blends into the background so well that no one ever remembers her name. Except today. Mark's eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" The receptionist swallowed but didn't look away. "Her name is in the system." A hush fell tight across the hall. Mark scoffed. "Impossible. I scanned through today's list myself." "No," she said, stepping out from behind the counter. "You scrolled past it." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God." Ava turned her head slightly calm, acknowledging, as if she were giving the young woman silent permission to continue. The receptionist held her ground. "I checked the roster this morning. Level 49. Clearance tier. Executive gold." The atrium pulsed like the walls themselves were listening. Mark laughed, but it came out cracked. "She fed you a fake name. Stop trying to play hero." "I'm not," the receptionist answered. Her voice wavered but didn't break. "I'm stating a fact. Her name was listed before 8 a.m. Tom exhaled sharply, relief flickering across his face. "But Mark?" He doubled down. He jabbed a finger at the receptionist. "You're confused, or she tricked you. People like—" He stopped himself. The lobby didn't need him to finish the sentence. They already heard the end of it long before he bit it back. A ripple moved through the crowd, anger sharpening, sympathy crystallizing, judgment shifting sides. The junior analyst who spoke earlier took another step forward. "Sir, she scanned her badge downstairs. I literally saw the green light." Mark spun on him. "Stay out of this, both of you." Neither of you knows what protocol looks like. The receptionist countered softly. Protocol doesn't start with shouting. Ava's eyes warmed just a fraction. A tiny shift, but heavy enough to be felt. Mark clenched his jaw. You two want to keep your jobs? Then stop defending someone who doesn't. He reached for Ava's arm again. And that was when the room truly snapped. Hey! The shout came from a middle-aged man in a gray blazer, one of the managers who had stayed silent until now. You don't put your hands on her. Mark froze mid-motion. Another voice rose. A woman near the back. She hasn't raised her voice once. Why is he grabbing her? Then another. And another. She's not a threat. Let her speak. This looks bad, man, real bad. The energy flipped subtle at first, then unmistakable. Instead of a crowd watching Ava be detained, it had become a crowd watching Mark expose himself. Tom stepped closer to Ava, not touching her, but standing between her and Mark just enough for the entire room to see the shift. Sir, Tom said quietly, we should hear her out. Mark stared at him, stunned. You're siding with her? Tom didn't answer. He didn't need to. The crowd became louder in their silence than Mark had been in his shouting. Ava looked at the receptionist, the young woman who had risked her job to tell the truth, and gave her a subtle nod of gratitude. A small gesture. But it settled the girls shaking hands instantly. Mark's voice cracked. You're all making a mistake! But no one listened. Ava finally spoke, measured, soft, deliberate. You ignored the system. You ignored procedure. And now, you're ignoring your own team. Her voice rolled across the atrium like a slow, gathering tide. The crowd leaned in. Mark's authority wasn't just wobbling. It was slipping. And the storm he thought he controlled? It was building in the hands of the very people he underestimated. The moment didn't just tighten, it fractured. Mark's face twisted, red climbing up his neck as the crowd shifted against him. Authority slipping from his hands, he lunged for the last thing he thought he could still control. Ava. Enough! He snapped, grabbing her by the wrist this time, harder than before. The sound that followed was small, barely a gasp from the receptionist, but it rippled through the atrium like something breaking underwater. Afa didn't yank her arm away, didn't recoil. Her body stayed anchored to the polished floor, steady as a stone in a storm. But the room reacted for her. Hey, don't touch her. You can't do that. That's assault. Phones shot up higher, trembling now, not from fear but outrage. Tom moved in instantly, his hand on Mark's forearm. Mark, let go, he warned, voice low. But Mark shoved him off, eyes locked on Ava with something darker than anger. Something fueled by being watched, challenged, exposed. You're done here, he hissed at her. You hear me? Done. I'm calling the police. A pulse thudded through the room. Ava looked down at the hand gripping her wrist. Then she looked up at Mark. And suddenly everything went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't absence of sound but presence of memory. Her mind pulled her backward. To a hotel lobby at 16. Where a clerk grabbed her elbow and dragged her outside because guests don't loiter. Oh. To a college bookstore at 19, where a cashier held her backpack until security arrived because students don't dress like that. To a bank at 24, where a manager locked her card behind the counter and called the police before she could speak a full sentence. Hands on her, hands claiming ownership, hands mistaking her silence for absence. The flashback didn't blur, it sharpened. The smell of old carpet, the fluorescent hum, the cold sting of being touched like she didn't belong, and then slowly the memory dissolved back into the present, into the sound of Mark's breath, the tremble in the receptionist's throat, the crowd's simmering disbelief. Ava's voice returned first. Calm. Level. Surgical. Remove your hand. Mark tightened it. Make me. The words dropped like gravel. Tom stepped closer, panic edging his tone. Mark, this is going too far. But the junior analyst broke first. Let her go, he shouted, stepping into the circle forming around Ava. Several others joined in, voices overlapping. She hasn't done anything. Are you insane? Let go of her. Someone get HR down here. This is not protocol, this is harassment. The pressure flipped, not just morally, but physically. Mark wasn't the center anymore. Ava was. And the room wasn't revolving around his authority, it was orbiting her restraint. Ava finally moved, not yanking, not pulling, just slowly raising her free hand and placing it on Mark's wrist, not to hurt, not to fight, but to remind him that she was choosing calm. Let go, she repeated, softer than before, which somehow made it hit harder. Mark jerked his arm back as if burned, but not before shoving her shoulder, sending her one step off balance. That was it. The room exploded. Tom grabbed Mark's arm. A woman near the front rushed forward with her phone. The manager in the gray blazer shouted, "Step away from her!" Someone else yelled, "You're done, man. Done." Mark barked back, "She's trespassing! You're all blind!" But Tom held him still. "No, you're out of line." A hush snapped tight again. Ava straightened her blazer, brushing the place where he pushed her, each movement calm as a blade being slid back into its sheath. Then she lifted her eyes steady, unbroken, and said, "You didn't touch me because I was a threat. You touched me because I wasn't loud." The words struck the room like a slow-motion collapse. Phones rose higher, breath stalled. Mark blinked, thrown off balance for the first time. "What does that mean?" he spat. Ava stepped closer, one quiet, devastating step. "It means your problem isn't my presence." Another beat. "It's your assumptions." The room froze, because everyone knew that was the last warning, before the storm changed hands. The atrium didn't breathe. Not the people, not the walls, not even the ceiling vents humming overhead. Everything held still frozen in the aftermath of Ava's last sentence. Mark's bluster staggered. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Tom still had a hand blocking him. The crowd had shifted into a protective crescent around Ava. And the cameras were practically glowing red with attention. Ava didn't look at any of them. She reached slowly, purposefully into her blazer and pulled out her phone. No rush, no dramatic flourish, just a quiet, deliberate motion that somehow carried more authority than any shout Mark had thrown all morning. Mark stepped forward, panicked. "Put that away. You can't film security procedure." "I'm not filming," Ava said. 3 words, perfectly even. Devastatingly calm, she swiped once and lifted the phone to her ear. A single name left her lips. "Nia." The crowd murmured. Tom's brows drew together. Even the receptionist swallowed, sensing the shift in the air. On the other end, a clear, controlled voice answered instantly. "Yes, ma'am. I'm here." Something about the tone, steady, professional, prepared, spread through the room like a quiet shockwave. Ava spoke softly. "We have a situation in the lobby." Nia didn't ask for details. She didn't gasp. She didn't hesitate. "Understood. Protocol 7? A hush slammed over the crowd. Mark blinked. "Protocol? What protocol?" "This is a trespassing call. She's not allowed." Ava raised one hand not to silence him, but simply to finish her sentence uninterrupted. The gesture was polite, but the effect was absolute. "Yes," she said into the phone. "Initiate Protocol 7. Log the incident. Timestamp every verbal exchange." Her voice stayed composed, almost gentle, which made it terrifying. Nia replied, "Already recording. Security audit system is live. I'm patching compliance in." Compliance. The word hit the room like a stone dropped in still water. A supervisor near the elevators straightened. A woman in a blazer lowered her phone, suddenly pale. Tom's eyes widened with dawning realization. But Mark panicked. "Hey, hey!" he shouted, jabbing a finger toward the phone. "You don't get to activate anything. You don't have a protocol. You don't even work here." Ava didn't look at him. "Upload the footage from all lobby cameras," she said softly into the line. "Every angle." Nia responded, "Already syncing to the internal archive. Do you want me to alert building operations?" "Not yet," Ava said. "But keep them on standby." Mark sputtered. "Standby for what?" Ava finally turned her gaze toward him again, calm, steady, the eye of a storm that had just chosen its moment. "For accountability." The word landed heavier than anything she'd said all day. Mark looked around wildly, desperate for allies, but the crowd wasn't with him anymore. Not after the grabbing, not after the shouting, not after the lies. The junior analyst stepped forward again, voice firmer now. "Sir, she's clearly authorized to—" "Shut up," Mark snapped, pointing at him with a trembling hand. "This is all for show. She's bluffing." "Oh." Nia's voice came through the phone again, louder this time, echoing through the hushed atrium. "Ma'am, compliance has confirmed receipt. They are actively monitoring." 3 people gasped. One man whispered, "Oh God." The receptionist covered her mouth with her hand. Mark stepped back. For the first time, real fear cracked his expression. Ava lowered the phone slightly but didn't hang up. "Mark," she said softly. He flinched like she had shouted. "I gave you multiple chances to follow procedure. You ignored everyone. And you—" His voice shook. You think you get to tell me how to do my job? Ava exhaled slow, measured. Not angry, not triumphant, certain. I'm not telling you, she said. I'm documenting you. The lobby erupted in whispers, a rising tide of understanding sweeping through the room. Ava didn't move, didn't raise her voice, didn't even adjust her blazer, but the power in the atrium had shifted entirely. Quiet, total, irreversible. And everyone felt it, especially Mark, who suddenly realized he wasn't holding the line anymore. He was standing on the wrong side of it. For a moment, the atrium felt suspended, as if every molecule of air had pressed pause. Ava lowered her phone, the line with Nia still open, still recording, still funneling every second into the compliance vault that Mark never imagined he'd stand in front of. Monitoring active, Nia's crisp voice echoed through the speaker, and with that, the room shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. Mark backed up half a step. Monitoring? That doesn't mean anything. Anyone can pretend they know someone in compliance. Ava didn't speak. Not yet. She simply slipped the phone back into her blazer with quiet precision. The movement was so controlled, the crowd instinctively stilled again, sensing the atmosphere changing temperature. It was the calm before a truth. Tom swallowed hard. Ma'am, do you work upstairs? No, Mark spat quickly, desperate. She does not work here. She's pulling some corporate jargon hoping we'll panic. A young intern whispered, Mark, I don't think she's the one who's panicking. Mark spun. Shut it. Ava stepped forward, not aggressively, not confrontationally, just one single step measured, grounded, inevitable. And suddenly the entire lobby felt too small for what was coming. Mark, she said, voice low even, almost gentle, you've insisted for 20 minutes that I don't belong here. Her tone didn't accuse. It documented. You've shouted at me, grabbed me, dismissed your own team, ignored your protocols, and refused to check the system. He opened his mouth, but she lifted a hand, and he froze, shocked by his own compliance. But the truth is simpler than your assumptions. She reached into her blazer again. This time, Mark didn't try to stop her. The leather case opened with that same soft click the crowd remembered from earlier, the click he had slammed shut. The click they now understood he should have let finish. Ava lifted the ID badge between two fingers. It gleamed under the atrium's skylights, black, gold, and unmistakable. The highest clearance level the company had. Tom's breath caught. The receptionist gasped. Someone near the elevators whispered, No way. Ava held it up not to brag, not to brandish, but to reveal. I don't belong in the lobby, she said softly. I belong on the top floor. A heartbeat. A pause. A slow, devastating silence. Then she delivered the line that detonated the room. Mark, you called me a trespasser. In a building I own. The atrium didn't react at first, not because it wasn't stunned, but because every person needed a second to confirm they heard correctly. Own. Not manage. Not oversee. Own. A sound escaped someone half gasp, half disbelief. A woman near the front dropped her phone and scrambled to pick it up. The intern clapped a hand over his mouth. Tom stepped back like the floor had shifted under him. Mark? He went white. That's not you, you're not... Ava tucked the badge against her palm. I am Ava King, Chief Executive Officer of King Enterprises, primary shareholder, chair of the board. Each title hit like a gavel, clean, measured, final. And this, she added quietly, is my headquarters. A wave tore through the crowd, shock, awe, embarrassment, adrenaline all colliding at once. The receptionist pressed both hands to her mouth. The junior analyst whispered, Oh my God. I stood up to her boss. The manager in the gray blazer exhaled a single word, Jesus. But the room wasn't finished. Because Ava wasn't finished. She looked at Mark with no malice, no raised voice, just the precise calm of a woman who had lived through this scene too many times to be surprised by it. You wanted a real executive, she said. I'm right here. Mark stumbled back, hitting the security desk behind him. His bravado collapsed in pieces at his feet. No, this can't. You were dressed. You walked in. You didn't. Ava's voice cut gently through his unraveling. You weren't evaluating my badge. You were evaluating my appearance. A full second of silence. The longest second the building had ever held. Then the atrium erupted not in chaos, but in the collective exhale of truth finally spoken aloud. The atrium didn't erupt. It tightened, as if everyone inhaled at the same time and forgot how to let go. Ava's badge still glinted in the air, black, gold, undeniable. Mark stared at it like it was rewriting reality in front of him. No, this is some trick, he stammered. You can't be. Ava didn't need to correct him. Nia's voice through the speaker did it for her. Ma'am, compliance has confirmed your identity. Do you authorize credential review? A wave of whispers rippled through the room. Credential review was no joke. Everyone knew what came next. Ava spoke softly. Proceed. 3 seconds later, Mark's badge beeped. Once, sharply, the light shifted from blue to red. Suspended. Instantly, the receptionist gasped. Tom froze. The junior analyst muttered, he just lost access. Mark's voice cracked. Reset it. She's lying. She dressed like she didn't look like. He caught himself too late. Ava stepped closer, calm enough to crush him. You didn't question my badge, she said. You questioned my presence. Something in the crowd shifted. Agreement, recognition, shame. Nia's voice returned. Step 2 ready. Removal from post. Do you authorize? Mark panicked. Please don't do this. I was just doing my job. Ava's reply was steady. Your job never required you to put your hands on me. Tom looked away, the truth stinging more than the reprimand. Ava's voice softened, but it cut cleaner than any shout. Intent isn't impact. Then, Nia, authorize. A tone rang across the atrium, the unmistakable building ops signal. 2 security supervisors approached, calm and professional. Mark Elson, one of them said. You're relieved of duty pending review. Come with us. Mark's shoulders collapsed. This is a mistake, please. But the crowd wasn't convinced. Not after everything, the receptionist whispered. She never even raised her voice. Tom nodded. And she still ended him. Ava looked at the young employees who had spoken up. Thank you, she said. Simple, human, but heavy. As Mark was led away, the atrium finally exhaled. Because justice hadn't arrived loudly. It had arrived quietly, precisely, inevitably. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, but Ava didn't step inside yet. Not until the room understood what had just happened. The atrium was quiet, not tense, not fearful, but changed, like the air itself had taken a lesson. The receptionist stood near the desk, hands still lightly trembling. Tom kept a respectful distance, shoulders square, eyes lowered. The junior analyst hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Ava turned to them calm, collected, untouched by the chaos she'd just walked through. You all saw what happened, she said. Not accusing, not lecturing, just naming the truth. Respect isn't optional. It's the minimum standard. The words didn't echo, they settled. Soft, heavy, unforgettable. The junior analyst swallowed. Ma'am, I'm sorry we didn't act sooner. Ava shook her head gently. You acted when it counted. That's what matters. The receptionist blinked back emotion. I've worked here 3 years. No one in your position has ever thanked me. Ava offered her a small, real nod. Then let today be the beginning of something better. Tom stepped forward, voice low. I should have stopped him earlier. You will next time, Ava said. No anger, only expectation. People drifted closer not to crowd her, but to be near the gravity she carried. A quiet circle formed around her without anyone meaning to. Someone whispered, she didn't raise her voice once. Another replied, that's exactly why it worked. Ava turned toward the elevator again, but paused at the threshold. One last look at the faces staring back, some humbled, some inspired. Some changed in ways they'd only understand later. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, she said softly. I came to raise the standard. What you choose to do with that is on you. No applause, not cheers, just a silence full of respect. The elevator doors opened fully. Ava stepped inside, straight-backed, unhurried, undeniably in command. And as the doors slid shut, the atrium finally exhaled, lighter, wiser, and forever marked by the woman who changed it, without ever needing to shout. When the elevator closed behind Ava, the atrium finally remembered how to breathe, but it didn't breathe the same. People stood in small clusters, speaking in low, shaken tones like survivors recounting a moment they didn't fully understand until it was over. The junior analyst scrubbed a hand over his face. I can't believe we just watched the CEO get harassed in her own lobby. The receptionist shook her head softly. No, We watched her handle it better than any of us could have. Tom stood apart, staring at the place where Ava had stood. I froze, he admitted. I let him take the lead, and it was the wrong call. The manager in the gray blazer joined him. Then fix it. We all saw what hesitation costs. 2 interns lingered near the elevators, still replaying the moment. She didn't get loud, one whispered. The other nodded. She didn't need to. The whole room shifted when she spoke. Gradually, people returned to their routines, but not with the same posture, not with the same assumptions. The receptionist straightened the front desk, fingers steadier now. I'm logging an incident report. A real one. Tom nodded. Good. Today proved something. Silence is a choice. The atrium, once indifferent, now felt charged. Like decisions made here would echo further than before. Ava had left the lobby, but the standard she set was still standing in the center of the room, untouched, unshakable, and impossible to forget. By late afternoon, the headquarters hummed again, emails flying, phones ringing, heels tapping across polished floors. But underneath the routine, something fundamental had shifted. Ava closed the final report on her screen, its language precise, complete. No embellishment, no anger, just truth documented, undeniable. She stepped toward the window, watching the city move with its usual urgency. A place that once dismissed her, a place she now shaped. For a long moment, she let the silence settle warm, earned, absolute. Let today mark the floor, she whispered, not the ceiling. Then she turned off her monitor, gathered her notes, and walked toward the conference room where new policy awaited her signature. The building didn't just remember what happened that morning, it adjusted to her standard. Fade out.